A very good morning to sir and fellow friends. My name is Chong Yong Ching. My matching number is 278027. Today, me and my friends from class History of Economic Tools, Group A, Team 4, will present about the Marginalist School. We will talk about the 5 major tenets and also the contribution for 3 economics in the Marginalist School. Our group has 6 members, including me, which are Teh Ji Qian, Lo Guan Cheng, Lim Yizi, Ng Po Zo, and also the Tu Xiwei. Firstly, we start from the introduction and 5 major questions. Pozo and Inzi will have to present what is the introduction and also the 5 major questions in the Marginalist School.
Hello everyone, I'm a lecturer. My name is Pozo and my matric number is 278496. Let me make an introduction for our Marginalist School. In 1871 years, Javers and Megan published their Infuriations book on marginal utility theory, and the School of Marginalists arose in the same years. However, before that, already have the forerunners, Antokono and Jules Perdue, pioneers to use marginal analysis in economics. Next, Chambers and Menger took the theory and add more data. Then it's published as a book to spread marginal utility theory. So we can see have the second generation appear, like Edward and Clark, expand the further theory of marginal utility. In last chapter, we have learned about the German historical school support the government interventions and inductive approach. However, the marginal school was opposed to GHS because they support the laissez-faire system and deductive approach. And last, we must remember the marginalist school finally become a part of neoclassical economics and microeconomics. Finish the introduction, we come to the historical background part. Even 100 years after the beginning of industrial revolutions, many serious economic and social problems remain unsolved. That includes the problem of uneven distributions of wealth and income, poverty, business frustration, and farmer and farm labor were forced to migrate to city. From that time, the people find the solution beyond the classic economic thinking because they face a lot of challenges like long working hours, dangerous and unhealthy working conditions with another. In 19th century, Europe developed 3 approaches to overcoming social problems. They are to promote socialism, to boost trade unionism, and to demand government intervention in the economies. It's not hard to say they want to fight violence with violence, but they all 3 followed classic economic precepts. However, the marginalists oppose all 3 solutions because they support laissez-faire. Then, the marginalists start to defend market allocation and distribution, reprove government interventions, denounce socialism, and they sought to discourage labor unionism as either ineffective or pernicious. All in all, the marginalists inherit and agree the policies of classic economy. And this topic have 10 major tenets. That includes the focus on the margin, rational economic behavior, microeconomic emphasis, the use of abstract deductive method, the pure competition emphasis, demand-oriented price theory, emphasis subjective utility, equilibrium approach, the measure of lag with capital goods, and minimum government involvement. We'll cover each of those points in detail. The first major tenet is focus on margin. The marginalists focus on the chains where decision is made. That theory is based on the marginal principle of Ricardo. Then, many other economists also have used that in their theory, like theory of imputations, marginal productive, with another theory. Next is the rational economic behavior. This approach is originated in the work of Jeremy Bentham. Normally, the people know how to balance the marginal utility by rational. Before the people decides, they will balance the marginal benefit and marginal cost first. So we can know the main driver of human behavior is pursuit of utility. The third point is microeconomic emphasis. The marginalists mainly focus on the behavior of individual person or friends only. That means they only use the view of microeconomy only, like individual decision making or the output for specific friends. So we can know the marginalists are not using macroeconomic analysis. After that is the use of the abstract deductive method. In France, we have said the marginalists is support the abstract and deductive approach, and the pioneer of this method is David Ricardo. He's trying to use the descriptive assumption to boost his arguments. It has 2 important parts. The first one is about partial equilibrium. They try to escape from the complex reality of the world to better understand it. As the below picture shows with us, the first example, the dancer is thin. There's a theory. Karen is a dancer. There's a precision. That form, Karen is thin. There's an observation. The second part is about characteristics parables. There's a mental for change one variable at a time, but another factor fixed. So allow researchers unpick complex phenomena step by step. All in all, this method can help us to simplify and permit in an order and systematic manner. Next is a peer competition emphasis. The marginalist assumptions of peer competition because it's fair for everyone. Our world is small. Only through the interaction, thousands of people only can form the demand, supply, and price of markets. So nobody have the power market to take the price. And that will make sure everyone can enjoy the homogeneous product and uniform price in the peer competition market. Besides, the demand-oriented price theory also is an important major tenet. The classical school and fixed supplies is an important determinant of market price. Well, the marginalists identify demand as a significant determinant of price. So, as a combination, the neoclassical school synthesized the supply and demands are both the determinant for price. After that is the emphasis on subjective utility. Marginalists believe that demand is depend on marginal utility because there's a subjective psychology phenomenon. So, what is the marginal utility? It's the extra utility a person from consuming extra units of a particular goods. So we can look the formula of marginal utility is the change of total utility divide the change of quantity. So we can look at the example. Below table show to us when the people eat the first hamburger, they will get the 10 units total utility. Then they will eat the second hamburger, they will get the 15 unit total utility. So we can choose the formula to get the marginal utility of hamburger is 5 units. That show when the quantity of goods increase, the total utility also will increase. But the marginal utility is opposite, it will decrease.
Good day everyone, my name is Lindsay and my matching number is 2788248. I will continue with the 8 major tenets with its equilibrium approach. The marginalists believe that economic forces generally tend toward equilibrium. There is a balancing of opposing forces. New movements towards equilibrium occur whenever disturbances cause dislocations. As an example, we can see the figure beside that. When the demand of land decreases, then the market will occur the new equilibrium. Then, 9 is the measure of land with capital goods. The marginalists combine the land and capital resources like interest, rent, and profit as returns on property resources. This analysis refutes the ground rent as unearned income and an unnecessary payment to ensure the use of land. They usually couple the reward to the landowner with interest theory. The last major tenet is minimum government involvement. The marginalists agree with minimum government involvement in the economy is the most desirable policy. In most cases, natural economy law should be left alone if maximum social benefit has to be achieved. We can see the example compared with the socialism. The countries with limited governments are associated with higher annual incomes, better health, longer life expectancy, and greater political and civil liberties. This is because the market of they has more free space. The third major question is, whom did the marginalists benefit or seem to benefit? In general, marginalists aim to benefit all parties in the economy by providing a better understanding about allocating resources in the market efficiently and liberalizations in economy rather than clarifications by a classical school. The marginalists were successful in achieving this goal to a great extent by showing that under competitive conditions, the workers' wage will be equal to their contributions to the value of the output. The marginalists helped counter the Marxist call for revolutions by the proletarians, which is the law of the motion theory. For those who resisted change, the economists of liberalism also benefit to them in maintaining their status quo. It is also benefit to the employers because by overseeing the labor unions and attributing unemployment on artificially high and inflexible double wages. Besides that, the marginalism also defends the landlord from regarding rent theory criticism. In the regarding rent theory, it assumes that land is the nature gift, has no supply price and no cost of the production. Lastly, this school also have benefited the wealthy, as they will generally oppose the government involvement that will redistribute income. The redistribution of income in helping the economy is definitely welcome for every government. Next, how was the marginalist school very useful or correct in this time? There are 5, which are developments of geometric diagrams and mathematical techniques. The importance of demand in determining prices, the use of assumptions in economic analysis, partial equilibrium analysis, and microeconomic approach. First, the Marginalist School developed the new and powerful tools of analysis, especially geometric diagram and mathematical technique, which can make the economics be more precise social science. Moreover, this school gives demand more importance in determining prices. Demand conditions were important as a determinant of prices for both final goods and factor of the production. The school has emphasized the forces that shape individual decisions, while the classical economics only emphasis on supply as the significant determinant of price. Third, the use of assumption in economic analysis, popularizing the concept of assumptions and make assumptions related to the economic activity that were not considered or clearly stated in the classical thinking. Next, partial equilibrium analysis method championed by many members of this school, which was effective for abstracting from the complexity of the real world. This method allows one variable to change at a time while keeping all the other variables constant. The investigators can dissect complex phenomena one step at a time by using this method. The problems of the immensely complicated society with its countless variables were thereby simplified and penetrated in an orderly and systematic manner. Lastly, microeconomic approach. It complements the macroeconomic approach because macroeconomy may ignore many problems by looking at the economy as a whole. For example, although the nation's average real per capita income may be rising, particular groups of people may become increasingly desperately poor. Next, which tenets of the Marginalist School became lasting contribution? Several marginalist tenets and subsequently challenged or rejected. First, marginalist and neoclassical employment theory. Keynes point to the fallacy of the position associated with marginalist and neoclassical employment theory. By lowering salaries, a firm can grow in markets by selling more things at lower prices. It will be unaffected by a drop in purchasing power among its own employees because they only buy a small part of the firm's output. However, if every company lowers salaries, the market will contract rather than expand. The Keynes view that there are alternative means to reductions in nominal wage to achieve full employment. Second, pure competition. Because revenue dropped after the 1870, the assumptions of pure competition is too restricted to be effective. As new events occur and new economic theories develop, this assumption became outdated. Besides, marginalists failed to explain economic growth and business cycle. The school was unable to explain economic growth and its theory proves insufficient for a country that was still developing. Business cycle analysis was also not improving that supply creates its own demands and full employment is the rule. Lastly, the marginalist, a static, timeless, deductive method that was not supported by empirical evidence. It is challenged by inductive method from the German historical school. This slide is about the lasting contribution. Regardless of the criticism, many of the marginalist theories still can be found in contemporary textbooks on principles of economics and microeconomics. The example of lasting contributions are mathematical economy, the basic monopoly model, theory of duopoly, the theory on diminishing marginal utility, the theory of rational consumer choice, the law of demand, the law of diminishing marginal returns, and so on. In the past 2 decades, this choice theoretic approach introduced by the marginalists has experienced resurgence within economy.
That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Poiso and Inzi. Now we're moving to the contribution for three economics. We are Antoine Augustine Quinault, William Stanley Jevon, and also the friendship White at work. Firstly, she will present about the information for Antoine Augustine Quinault.
Antoine Augustine Quinault was a French philosopher and mathematician who published treatises on mathematics, philosophy, and economics. He was born on 28 August 1801 at Gray and died on 31st of March 1877 in Paris. In 1838, the book Research on the Mathematical Principle of the Theory of Wealth was published, in which he used the application of the formula and symbol of mathematics in economics analysis. Quinault was the first economist to apply mathematics to economics analysis and to develop concise mathematical model of poor monopoly, duopoly, and poor competition. In analysis, the demand for copper and zinc, both used to produce bonds, Quinault also developed the earliest complete model of what we now refer to as the derived demand for resources. Quinault is considered a forerunner of the Marginalist School because much of his analysis focused on the rate of change of the total cost and revenue function. His contribution to economic analysis include his theory of poor monopoly and theory of duopoly. Quinault believed that a company could maximize its profit by setting a price at which marginal revenue equal to the marginal cost. According to Quinault mineral water analysis, Quinault assumed that the total and marginal cost of obtaining mineral water are zero. Therefore, total profit will be maximized at the output where total revenue is the greatest. By using calculus, Quinault point out that quantity is where the derivative of the marginal revenue is equal to zero. By using calculus, Quinault point out that quantity is where the derivative of the marginal revenue is zero. Graph A and B will show the Quinault theory graphically. Graph A shows the proprietor of the mineral water face a downward sloping of the demand curve. The marginal revenue curve lies below the demand curve because of the lower price applied to all liters of the mineral water, not just the extra one sold. That is, each additional unit sold will add its own price to the total revenue. But if the extra unit have not been offered for sale, the price received on other liter will be higher. The loss of this potential revenue must be subtracted from the gain in revenue to the sale of extra liter. Therefore, the marginal revenue is less than the price at all, but the first unit of output and the marginal revenue curve fall more rapidly than the demand curve. The point on marginal revenue curve in graph A represents rate of change of the total revenue shown by the total revenue curve in graph B. Marginal revenue is the derivative of the product P times Q. At 60 francs, buyer will purchase 200 liters, and as shown in graph B, total revenue will rise to 12,000 francs. This is the monopoly's maximum total revenue. 12,000 francs is also the maximum profit since the total costs are assumed to be zero. We can observe that marginal revenue in graph A is zero at the profit maximizing price and output of 60 francs and 200 liters. The marginal revenue equal to the marginal cost, which is equal to zero. That is, the profit maximizing condition is fulfilled. We see in graph B that any price above or below the 60 francs will reduce the total revenue. Quinault extends his theory to circumstances in which marginal costs are positive. The monopolies facing positive costs and will also maximize profit at the level output where marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. This rule also applies in situations where the numerous competitors exist.
Thank you, Shiwei. Now, Zitian and Guanqing will talk about the second economics, which is the William Stanley Jevons.
Next, I will introduce William Stanley Jevons. Jevons born in Liverpool, England at year 1835, and he studies chemistry and botany in University College London, which is UCL, and he died at year 1882. Next, I will introduce the details of Jevons. At year 1847, Jevons' father was bankruptcy, and Jevons spent 5 years as assayer at Mint in Sydney, and he has published some serious books on logic, such as Theory of Political Economy, The Cool Question, Elementary Lesson on Logic, and others. And he has become the professor of logic, political economy, and philosophy at Manchester and later at University College London. He has invented a logic machine which called logical piano, and he has also contribution to development of index number. And last, he died at 47 years old, down while swimming. For value theory, Jevons published a book named The Theory of Political Economy. In this book, Jevons states value depends entirely upon utility, and there are two different ideas from different persons. The first idea is Ricardo from classical school. He says that people got value because they need to die for them as a cost of production, while for the Jevons from Marginalist School believe that the pearl have value because the buyers get utility from them. The specific level of utility of pearl depends on the number of pearl currently have. There is 4 Jevons on value theory, which is theory of diminishing marginal utility, rational choice, the equal marginal rules, theory of exchange, and also Jevons on labor. First, theory of diminishing marginal utility. What is utility? Utility, in other words, called usefulness, and it cannot be measured directly. It can estimate by observed human behavior. For Jevons' opinion, Jevons rejects to compare the intensity of pleasure and pain between different people. Jevons says that a single individual can comparing the utility of successive unit of single goods. For several goods, we can compare with marginal utilities. Graph A shows total utility, while graph B shows marginal utility. As a result, as more unit of good X is consumed, the satisfaction will decrease. Means that the marginal utility will decline. There are 3 situations. When the total utility is increased, we can see that the marginal utility is positive. When the total utility achieves maximum point, the marginal utility will equal to 0. And when the total utility is decreased, the marginal utility will become negative. Last, the paradox of diamond and water that puzzles some of the classical economists will be solved by law of diminishing marginal utility, and the details will be presented by Group 5. Next is rational choice, the equal marginal rules. Jevons used his concept final utility to formalize a theory of rational choice. And as a rational customer, we wish to allocate the money to maximize the utility. So we will consider on marginal utility and also price of goods. To maximize utility, we must ensure that the marginal utility of all goods to its price is equal. For example, assume that we have good X and good Y. To maximize the utility, the marginal utility of good X to its price must equal to marginal utility for good Y to his price. There are 3 situations. The first situation is marginal utility of good X to his price is greater than marginal utility of good Y to his price. So the rational consumer will try to buy more good X, and it will cause the marginal utility of good X decrease, and also marginal utility of good X to its price decrease, and the consumer will continue to buy the good X until maximize utility, which is marginal utility of good X to its price is equal to marginal utility of good Y to its price. The second situation is marginal utility of good X to its price is smaller than marginal utility of good Y to its price. So the consumer will try to buy more good Y and will cause the marginal utility of good Y decrease, and also marginal utility of good Y to its price decrease. And the consumer will continue to buy the good Y until maximize utility. The third situation is marginal utility of good X twist price is equal to marginal utility of good Y twist price. This situation means that consumer total utility is maximized.
Theory of exchange. Jevon used his principle of utility maximization to explain the gain from exchange. There are two questions rise up in the theory of exchange, but before that we need to do some assumption. We need to assume that there are only two trading bodies in the market, which is A only has beef and B only have corns. The question one sounds like this: how the exchange of beef and corns will benefit A and B? Jevon used out the solutions, which is the equal marginal rule. Because A has only beef, the marginal utility per dollars of beef is smaller than the marginal utility per dollar of corns. So A will benefit by obtaining corns and give out. Well, for B, because B has only corns and the marginal utility per dollar of corn is smaller than marginal utility per dollar of beef. So for B, it's better for him to obtain beef and give up corn. Question 2. At what point will the exchange cease? When the marginal utility per dollar of beef is equal to marginal utility per dollar of corns, the exchange will end. At this point, there are no further possibilities of utility gains from exchange. For example, if the price of 1 kilo of stick is 10 times higher than the price of 1 kilo of corns, maybe 20 versus 2, which means that each person will consume both goods up to the point where the stick has 10 times the marginal utility of 1 kilo of corns, maybe 100 versus 10 units of marginal utility. Restate algebraically, the exchange will cease when the ratio of marginal utility of the two goods as seen by each trading party match the ratio of price. For example, is 100 over 10 equal to RM20 divided by RM2. Jevons on labor. Jevons holds utility to be determinants of exchange value. According to the political economics by Jevons, cost of production determines supplies, while the supplies determines final degree of utility, and the final degree of utility determines the value. This is totally different with the labor theory of value, which comes out by classical schools. Jevons argued that the labors cannot be the regulator of values because labor itself has unequal value. It is different infinitely in qualities and efficiency. Labor itself is a subjective psychological cause and painful extensions. The problems of economics is to satisfy our wants with the least possible sum of labor. To accomplish this, the workers must compare the pain of work and the pleasure of earnings. To understand further the Jevons on labor, we use the graph to explain the equilibrium between the pain of work and pleasure of working. The horizontal axis represents the working days, and the vertical axis above OX measure the pleasure, utility, and below line OX measure pain, this utility. There are two lines in this graph. The first one is MUE, which stands for marginal utility of earning, and another one is MDUW, which stands for marginal disutility of working. MUE is downward sloping, while MDUW is increasing in the beginning and then drop. The graphs can be separated into three phases. In the early phase, from O to B, the labor feel awesome as the working days increase. This can be easy to understand because in the early we start to workings, we will feel discomfortable with the environments and the careers and also the task of works. We need times to adapt the environments. In the next phases, which from B to C on MDUW, as the working hours increase, the laborers feel neither pleasure or pain. This is because the labor, they are already adapt to the environments and they can handle the task easily. However, move to the third phases, which is beyond C, the pains of additional works increase. This is because the laborers, they are classifying their energy and also times to works at the point M, where QM equal to DM, the pleasure gained from earnings associates with the last unit of work is exactly equal to the pain of labor adequate, which is MUE equal to MDUW. As a result, M equals to optimum amount of works that worker can earn in work days. So in summary, Jevons believe that marginal utility is a determinant of exchange value. The change in exchange value will cause the change of value of labor, which are wages rates, while the wage rate is the key determinant to obtain amount of work.
Thank you, Zhichen and Guan Cheng. Now I will present about the third economics, which is the friendship, right, and work. So let us see what is the background for the Friendship Right Award first. As you mentioned that Friendship Right Award born in Iran in 1848 year and he gone in 1926 year. He was studied at two different schools, which are the Old Folks University and also the Trinity College in the Dublin. Next, we're moving to the position that I carried before. There are 5 positions carried by him before. First is the two professor of the political economy at the Old Folks. Second, he also as a founder of the Royal Economic Society. Next, he became an editor of the Economy Journal before. And next, he was also as a president of the Statistical Society. And lastly, he became a fellow of the British Academy. Now we're moving to his contribution. There are 3 contributions given by him. First, he was one of the economists to discuss the oligopoly. Second, he discussed about what is the indifferent curve. And lastly, it also talked about what is the difference between the average product and marginal product, which is AP and MP. So these 3 contributions can be found in the mathematical physics. I will further talk about the indifferent curve and also the difference between average product and marginal product. Okay, I will talk about what is the indifferent curve first. I will use a diagram to explain it. For this diagram, it got 2 persons. First is a Robinson Crusoe represented by X1 and the second is Friday represented by X2. So Robinson have money, or we call it as a capital, while Friday has a labor. They are interested to the item for each other. Okay, in this diagram got 2 types of indifferent math. One is crucial side, which is represented by the Roman 1, 2 and 3, and second is a Friday one, which is represented by the number 1, 2 and 3. Okay, now we're moving to the next slide. This slide is telling about which curve is Friday and Crucial more preferred to. We see from Friday side first. Friday will more prefer to the curve far from the east, such as curve number 3. This is because curve number 3 is given a higher utility than curve number 2 and number 1. Okay, we're moving to the Crucial side. Crucial is more preferred to the curve far from the noise, which is curve Roman 3. Curve Roman 3 is given him a higher utility than the Roman 2 and Roman 1. This slide is about the total utility. As I mentioned just now, curve Roman 3 is given a higher utility than the Roman 2 and Roman 1, while the curve number 3 is given a higher utility than the number 2 and number 1. Okay, so just now I had explained about what is the diagram about and also which curve they prefer to. So now I move to the contra curve. What is the meaning of the contra curve? The contra curve is the logic of the tangency point of 2 sets in different curve. So for example, in this diagram, also got the contra curve. The contra curve happens when the crucial indifferent map is overlaying on the Friday's map. And Friendship Right Award said that before, because of the different interest between the 2 traders, so the price of the Friday labor in terms of the crucial money is indeterminate and they need to subject to the bargaining. So now we're moving to the example. There's a point which is point D. Point D is showing that the combination of indifferent curve Roman 1 and indifferent curve number 1. So we see from 2 perspectives. which is crucial perspective and Friday perspective. Firstly, we see from crucial perspective first. Crucial while choosing the indifferent curve Roman 3 rather than the Roman 1. The reason I also mentioned just now already, which is Roman 3 is given him a higher utility than the Roman 1. Well, Friday will still remain at the indifferent curve number 1. There is a new combination which is indifferent curve Roman 3 and indifferent curve number 1, which is 0.8. So next, we move to the Friday perspective. Friday will choose the indifferent curve number 3 rather than the number 1. This is because number 3 is given him a higher utility than the number 1, while crucial will remain stand at the indifferent curve Roman 1. The new combination also, which is indifferent curve number 3 and indifferent curve Roman 1, which is point C. In a conclusion, Friday is more preferred to the point C, which is combination of indifferent curve number 3 and indifferent curve Roman 1. If crucial is more preferred to the point A, which is the combination of indifferent curve number 1 and indifferent curve Roman 3. The combination is different and not the same. And this example have proved that the price is determinate. The decision is depend on the different interests between the trader. So we need the bargaining to set the final price or final outcome. Now we move to another theory which is different between the marginal product and average product. I also will use a diagram to explain what is the difference between the MP and AP. In this diagram, got two input and two different graphs. The two input is labor and capital. Well, the two different graph is graph A and graph B. Graph A it represent to the production short run. Well, graph B it represent the marginal product and average product. Next, this slide is about how to find the MP and AP with a different rate. We see how to find the MP first. MP is a change in total product associated with a change in the labor input. It got two ways to find. First is using a calculus. Second is we can draw a line tangent to the total production curve, and we should find the slope of this line. For example, in this diagram, we're drawing a line which is mm tangent to the total production curve. The slope of the mm is 0. So the amount showing at the MP curve also is 0, which is allocated at the point Y. Next, we see how to find the AP. We also can draw a line from origin to any point on the total production curve. And then we also need to find the slope of this line. For example, in this diagram, we draw a straight line on the total production curve, which is OA. And we found that the slope is TP over L, which is same to the amount of the average product in graph B. Now we move to the next slide. This slide is about how friendship White and work using a diagram to visualize the distinction between total production, average product, and marginal product. Before I start to explain what is the distinction between them, let me explain first what is the symbol in this slide. TP is represent to the total production, AP is represent to the average product, while the MP is represent to the marginal product. Now we start to see how the friendship White and work explain the distinction between them. I had divided them into the two parts. For first part, when TP increase, MP and AP also increase, but MP is above than the AP. In other words, MP is larger than the AP. For the second part, TP also keep increasing, but in a decreasing rate. When TP increase in a decreasing rate, MP and AP decrease, but this time AP is above than the MP, or we can say it as AP is more than MP. As a conclusion, they are the information and theory made by the friendship White and work. Okay, this slide is about the summary for 3 economics in the Marginalist School. I will have to conclude that what is the contribution for these 3 economics presented by me and my friend just now. So firstly, Anthony Augustine Conant got 2 contributions, which are theory of poor monopoly and the theory of poor poly. Next, the contribution for William Stanley Jevons is theory of diminishing marginal, rational choice, theory of exchange, and the Jevons on labor. And lastly, Francis White at work also have 2 contributions, which are indifferent curve and the difference between marginal product and average product. Now, Guan Cheng will have to do a conclusion for our presentation in today.
Conclusion. Marginalist schools begins in 1871 as Jevons and Manger published their books on marginal utility theory. The main intention of this school is to advance the interests of all humankind and promoting a better understanding about how a market allocates resource effectively as well as promotes economic liberty. Thus, Marginalist School emphasizes the laissez-faire systems and opposites to socialist ideology and government interventions. Although the Marginalist School has its own weaknesses, but many of their theories still can be found in contemporary textbooks on principles of economics and microeconomics. For example, theory of monopoly and duopoly, theory of values, indifference and exchange, and also difference between average and marginal product. These schools also speed up the progress in mathematicizations of economics and inputs to new classical economics. So, marginalist was only the transitory periods between classical and neoclassical school.
Okay, next slide is about the reference we get from two resources. First one is the textbook about history of economic tools, and the second one is from this website about the information for Antoine Augustine Crenard. That's all from us. We hope that this video can help you get more knowledge than before about the Marginalist School. Thank you.